What happens when a black intern breaks all the unspoken rules by helping a deaf visitor in front of the entire company without knowing the CEO is secretly watching? What started as a simple act of kindness turned into a corporate earthquake that nobody saw coming. If you think you know how this story ends, think again. Watch till the last second. Because the real twist will leave you speechless and make you want to hit subscribe for more stories that change the game. The marble lobby of Sterling & Co. was a place where silence was polished as bright as the floors, and every movement was measured, rehearsed, and watched. Nia Carter, a black intern in her 3rd month, had learned to move quietly, to blend in, to carry trays of coffee for executives who never remembered her name. But on this particular morning, as she balanced a tray of cappuccinos and lattes, she noticed a man standing at the reception desk, his hands moving in the air with urgent, practiced gestures. The receptionist, a woman with a perfect bun and a practiced smile, looked at him with thinly veiled irritation. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand," she said, her voice clipped, her eyes already searching for someone else to help. The man, dressed in a crisp suit but with worry etched into his face, tried again, his hands forming words in the silent language of the deaf. The receptionist only shook her head, her patience thinning with every second. Nia watched, her heart tightening. She knew that look, the look of someone being dismissed, not for what they'd done, but for who they were. Without thinking, she set the tray down on the counter, stepped forward and raised her hands. "Hello, sir, can I help you?" She signed, her movements smooth and confident. The man's face transformed, relief flooding his features as he signed back. "Thank you. I thought no one here would understand me." For a moment, the lobby seemed to pause. Conversations faded, footsteps slowed, and all eyes turned to the unlikely pair at the front desk. Nia interpreted for him, her voice steady, her hands translating his words for the receptionist and anyone else who cared to listen. The receptionist's irritation deepened, but she said nothing, her authority quietly undermined by Nia's competence. What Nia didn't know was that, just beyond the glass doors of the executive elevator, the CEO, Mr. Sterling himself, had stepped out and was watching every move. His gaze was sharp, assessing, but there was something else there too. A flicker of recognition, a memory perhaps, that softened the hard lines of his face. In that moment, Nia was just doing what felt right. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness was about to set off a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of the company. If you want to see what happens next, drop a like and comment. As the last echoes of Nia's sign language faded into the marble silence, the lobby's atmosphere shifted. People who had barely noticed her before now watched with a mix of surprise and discomfort. The receptionist, cheeks flushed with embarrassment, busied herself with paperwork, pretending not to notice the growing attention. But someone else noticed. Victoria Hale, the supervisor of the marketing department, whose heels clicked like a metronome of authority as she crossed the lobby. Victoria was known for her sharp suits and even sharper tongue, a woman who believed in order, protocol, and the invisible lines that kept interns in their place. She had built her reputation on control, and nothing irritated her more than an unexpected disruption to the corporate script. She paused just behind Nia, her presence cold and heavy, and cleared her throat in a way that demanded attention. "Excuse me," Victoria said, her voice slicing through the air, "but interns are not authorized to interact with clients without supervision. That's company policy." Her words were loud enough for everyone to hear. A public reminder of the hierarchy that ruled Sterling & Co.'s. Nia felt the weight of every eye in the lobby, the sudden pressure to shrink back into invisibility. But the deaf visitor looked at her, confusion and concern flickering across his face. Nia signed quickly. "It's okay, sir. I'm just helping." Victoria's lips curled into a tight smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. "Helping is admirable, but we have procedures for a reason. Please return to your assigned duties." The receptionist smirked, vindicated by the supervisor's intervention. For a moment Nia hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. She could feel the old fear rising, the fear of overstepping, of being labeled difficult, of losing the internship she'd worked so hard to get. But then she remembered her younger brother, Malik, who was deaf and had faced 1,000 small humiliations just like this. She straightened her shoulders and met Victoria's gaze. "I was just making sure our guest felt welcome," she said, her voice calm but firm. The CEO, still watching from the shadows, noted the exchange with growing interest. He saw not just a rule being broken, but a line being drawn, a test of character, both for Nia and for the company itself. The lobby, once a place of routine, had become a stage for something much bigger. If you want to see how Nia responds to the pressure and what the CEO does next, comment. The tension in the lobby was thick enough to taste. Nia stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest, but her face remained composed. Victoria's eyes narrowed, clearly expecting Nia to back down, to apologize and slink away. But Nia didn't move. The deaf visitor, sensing the shift in energy, looked between the two women, his hands hovering uncertainly, unsure if he should stay or go. The receptionist watched with a smug satisfaction, convinced that the intern was about to be put in her place. But before Victoria could deliver another cutting remark, a new voice cut through the lobby, calm, deep, and unmistakably authoritative. "Is there a problem here?" All heads turned as Mr. Sterling, the CEO, stepped forward from the shadows near the elevator. His presence was magnetic, commanding instant respect. Victoria straightened, her confidence faltering for just a moment. "No problem, sir," she replied quickly, her tone suddenly deferential. "Just a minor misunderstanding. Our intern was overzealous in assisting a visitor." Mr. Sterling's gaze shifted to Nia, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "Is that so?" he asked, his voice even. Nia met his gaze, refusing to look away. "I noticed our guest needed help communicating. I know sign language, so I offered to interpret." There was a brief pause as the CEO considered her words. The lobby was silent, everyone waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Mr. Sterling turned to the deaf visitor and, to everyone's surprise, signed a simple greeting, his movements slow but clear. The visitor's face lit up with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you for your patience," Mr. Sterling signed, then turned back to Nia. "It seems we could use more people with your initiative." Victoria's mouth fell open, her carefully constructed authority crumbling in an instant. The receptionist looked away, suddenly fascinated by her computer screen. Nia felt a surge of relief, but also a new sense of responsibility. The CEO had not only noticed her, he had publicly supported her. The balance of power in the lobby had shifted, and everyone knew it. But as Mr. Sterling invited the deaf visitor and Nia to join him in his office, Victoria's eyes burned with a quiet fury. This was not over. If you want to see what happens behind the CEO's closed doors, comment. The heavy glass doors of the executive suite closed with a soft click, sealing Nia, the deaf visitor, and Mr. Sterling away from the curious eyes of the lobby. The office was a world apart, quiet, sunlit, lined with books and awards, the air scented faintly of leather and ambition. Nia's nerves buzzed as she took a seat across from the CEO, the visitor settling beside her. Mr. Sterling offered a reassuring nod, then turned his attention to the visitor, signing with careful respect. "Welcome to Sterling & Co. How can we help you today?" The visitor, whose name tag read Mr. Ramirez, smiled, his hands moving with practiced ease. "Thank you. I'm here to discuss a potential partnership on accessibility initiatives. I was worried no one would understand me." Nia interpreted his words aloud, her voice steady, her hands moving in perfect sync. Mr. Sterling listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "We're always looking to improve," he replied, glancing at Nia. "And it seems we have more talent in this company than I realized." For the first time, Nia felt seen, not just as an intern, but as someone with real value. Mr. Ramirez explained his organization's mission, to help companies become more accessible for people with disabilities, not just in policy, but in practice. He spoke of technology, training, and the importance of hiring people who understood the challenges firsthand. Nia's mind raced with ideas, memories of her brother Malik's struggles and triumphs fueling her passion. She added her own thoughts, suggesting ways Sterling & Co. could make their spaces more welcoming, not just for deaf clients, but for anyone who felt invisible. Mr. Sterling listened, nodding, occasionally jotting notes. The conversation flowed easily, a far cry from the rigid hierarchy of the lobby. For a moment, Nia forgot her nerves, swept up in the possibility of real change. As the meeting wrapped up, Mr. Sterling turned to her. "Nia, I'd like you to be involved in this project. Your perspective is exactly what we need." Nia's heart soared, but she also felt the weight of new expectations. As they left the office, Mr. Ramirez thanked her in sign language, his gratitude genuine. But as the doors opened and they stepped back into the world of Sterling & Co., Nia caught a glimpse of Victoria down the hall, her expression cold and calculating. The real test, Nia realized, was only just beginning. If you're ready to see how Nia faces her next challenge, comment. As Nia returned to her desk, the buzz of the office felt different. Word of her meeting with the CEO had already begun to ripple through the cubicles, carried on whispers and curious glances. Some colleagues looked at her with newfound respect, others with thinly veiled suspicion. The receptionist, who had dismissed her earlier, now avoided eye contact altogether. But the sharpest gaze belonged to Victoria, who watched Nia from her glass-walled office, her lips pressed into a thin, unreadable line. Victoria was not the type to accept a challenge quietly. Within hours, she began her own campaign, not with open confrontation, but with subtle, calculated moves. She called a meeting with the other department heads, her tone casual but her words pointed. "We need to be careful about interns overstepping their roles," she said, her voice carrying just enough concern to sound reasonable. "It sets a dangerous precedent if anyone can just jump into client interactions." The others nodded, some out of agreement, others out of habit. Victoria's influence was strong, and she knew how to plant seeds of doubt. Soon, Nia noticed small changes. Tasks she'd handled confidently were reassigned. Emails she sent went unanswered. She was left out of meetings she'd previously been invited to. The message was clear. She was being isolated, her confidence tested at every turn. But Nia was no stranger to being underestimated. She remembered her brother Malik's advice. When they try to box you in, make your own space. Instead of shrinking, Nia doubled down on her work. She reached out to Mr. Ramirez, offering to help draft proposals for the accessibility project. She spent her lunch breaks researching best practices, building a case for why inclusion mattered, not just for clients, but for the company's future. Meanwhile, Victoria's campaign grew bolder. She began dropping comments in the break room about diversity hires and special treatment, always careful to keep her tone light, her words just ambiguous enough to avoid direct accusation. But Nia kept her head high, documenting every slight, every dismissive email, every whispered remark. She knew that sometimes the best way to fight back was to let the evidence speak for itself. As the week wore on, the tension in the office grew. Nia could feel the eyes on her, the silent question hanging in the air. Would she break, or would she rise? If you want to see how Nia turns the tables, comment by the end of the week. The atmosphere at Sterling & Co. was thick with unspoken tension. Nia felt it in every hallway glance, every awkward silence in the break room, every time her name was left off a meeting invite. But she refused to let the pressure break her. Instead, she focused on the accessibility project, pouring her energy into research, drafting proposals, and collaborating with Mr. Ramirez. She even reached out to a few colleagues she trusted, quietly building a small network of support. One afternoon, as she was finalizing a presentation on inclusive workplace practices, she received an unexpected email from Mr. Sterling's assistant. "The CEO would like you to present your ideas at the executive meeting next Monday." Nia's heart skipped a beat. This was her chance, not just to prove herself, but to show the entire leadership team the value of true inclusion. She spent the weekend preparing, rehearsing her points, and refining her slides. She even practiced her delivery in front of Malik, who offered feedback and encouragement in both spoken word and sign language. On Monday morning, Nia walked into the executive boardroom with her head held high. The room was filled with senior leaders, including Victoria, who sat near the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Mr. Sterling welcomed Nia warmly and introduced her to the group. "Nia has been working closely with Mr. Ramirez on our new accessibility initiative. I've asked her to share her vision for how we can make Sterling & Co. as a leader in this space." Nia took a deep breath and began her presentation.
She spoke about the importance of accessibility, not just as a legal requirement, but as a moral and business imperative.
She shared stories from her own life, including Malik's experiences, and highlighted the ways in which small changes could make a big difference for employees and clients alike. She demonstrated simple sign language greetings, inviting the executives to try them. The room was silent, but it was a different kind of silence, one of attention, not dismissal. Even Victoria, for all her skepticism, couldn't ignore the clarity and conviction in Nia's voice. When Nia finished, there was a moment of stillness. Then Mr. Sterling led the room in a round of applause. For the first time, Nia felt the tide turning. She had spoken her truth, and the company was listening. If you want to see what happens when the evidence comes to light, comment. The applause from the executive boardroom still echoed in Nia's mind as she returned to her desk. But she knew the real battle was just beginning. Victoria's eyes followed her every move, her expression a mask of polite indifference, but Nia could sense the storm brewing beneath. The next day, as Nia was organizing her notes, she received an anonymous message in her inbox. Watch your back. Some people don't like change. She stared at the screen, her resolve hardening. She had come too far to back down now. That afternoon, Victoria called an impromptu meeting with the department heads. Her tone was icy, her words carefully chosen. We need to address the issue of interns overstepping their boundaries, she began, glancing pointedly at Nia. It's important that we maintain professional standards and follow proper channels. The message was clear, but Nia refused to be intimidated. She had spent the past week documenting every slight, every dismissive email, every whispered remark. She had saved screenshots, recorded conversations in public spaces, and kept a detailed log of her interactions. She knew that if Victoria tried to escalate things, she would be ready. That evening, Nia met with Mr. Ramirez to discuss the next steps for the accessibility project. As they reviewed their progress, Nia confided in him about the resistance she was facing. Mr. Ramirez listened carefully, then offered a suggestion. If you have evidence of discrimination or sabotage, you should bring it to Mr. Sterling. He needs to know what's happening behind the scenes. Nia hesitated, knowing the risks, but ultimately agreed. The next morning, she requested a private meeting with the CEO. In his office, she laid out her case, emails, recordings, and a timeline of events that painted a clear picture of the campaign against her. Mr. Sterling listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each new piece of evidence. When she finished, he thanked her for her courage and assured her that he would handle the situation personally. As Nia left his office, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had done everything she could. Now, it was up to the company to decide what kind of place it wanted to be. If you want to see how the confrontation unfolds and who comes out on top, comment the air in Sterling & Co. was electric with anticipation. Rumors swirled through the hallways. Something big was about to happen. Nia kept her head down, focusing on her work, but she could feel the tension building with every passing hour. That afternoon, an email from Mr. Sterling's office summoned all department heads and key staff to the main conference room. The subject line was simple: urgent, workplace conduct review. As employees filed in, the atmosphere was thick with unease. Victoria arrived last, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the room for allies. Mr. Sterling stood at the head of the table, his expression grave. Nia sat quietly near the end, her heart pounding, but her face calm. When everyone was seated, Mr. Sterling began. I've called this meeting because I've received credible reports of unprofessional conduct and attempts to undermine our company's values of inclusion and respect. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are here to address these issues openly and transparently. He gestured to Nia. Ms. Carter, would you please share your experience? The room fell silent as Nia stood. She spoke clearly, recounting the events of the past weeks, the initial incident with the deaf visitor, the subtle isolation, the whispered remarks, and the obstacles placed in her path. She presented her evidence, emails, logs, and even a few audio clips of conversations in public spaces. The impact was immediate. Faces around the table shifted from skepticism to shock. Some department heads looked away, uncomfortable. Others glanced at Victoria, whose face had gone pale. When Nia finished, Mr. Sterling turned to Victoria. "Ms. Hale, do you have anything to say in response to these allegations?" Victoria tried to compose herself, but her voice trembled. "This is all being taken out of context. I was only trying to maintain standards." Mr. Sterling cut her off, his tone icy. "Standards do not include discrimination or sabotage. This company will not tolerate such behavior, no matter who is responsible." The room was silent, the message unmistakable. For the first time, Victoria's authority was not just questioned, it was dismantled. As the meeting ended, Mr. Sterling announced that a full review would be conducted, and that any further retaliation against Nia or anyone else would result in immediate disciplinary action. Nia felt a surge of relief and pride. She had stood up for herself, and for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. If you want to see the aftermath and how Nia's courage changes the company, comment. The days following the confrontation were unlike anything Sterling & Co. had ever seen. The company buzzed with conversations about what had happened in the conference room. For the first time, employees who had once kept their heads down began to speak up, sharing their own stories of being overlooked or dismissed. The culture of silent compliance was cracking, and in its place, something new was taking root. Victoria Hale, once the unchallenged enforcer of the old order, was placed on administrative leave pending a formal investigation. Her absence was felt immediately. Meetings ran smoother, the atmosphere lightened, and people seemed less afraid to voice their ideas. The receptionist who had once dismissed the deaf visitor now greeted everyone with a little more care, her tone softer, her eyes more attentive. Nia, meanwhile, found herself at the center of a quiet revolution. Colleagues who had previously ignored her now stopped by her desk to thank her, to ask questions, or to offer their support. Some shared their own experiences of feeling invisible, and Nia listened, encouraging them to document and speak up, just as she had. Mr. Sterling called her into his office one afternoon, his demeanor warmer than ever. "You've done more than just help a visitor, Nia," he said. "You've helped this company see itself more clearly. That takes courage and vision." He offered her a permanent position, not as an intern, but as the new diversity and inclusion coordinator, with a mandate to help shape the company's future. Nia accepted, her heart full of pride and gratitude. She knew the work ahead would not be easy, but she was ready. With Mr. Ramirez's partnership, she began drafting new policies, organizing workshops, and creating spaces for open dialogue. The accessibility project moved forward, and Sterling & Co. were started to transform, not just in words, but in action. Employees learned basic sign language greetings, ramps and accessible tech were installed, and the company's website was overhauled for inclusivity. Nia's journey from overlooked intern to leader inspired others to believe that change was possible, even in the most rigid of places. If you want to see how Nia's story inspires a movement beyond the company walls, comment Months passed, and the changes at Sterling & Co. became impossible to ignore. What had started as a single act of kindness in the lobby had grown into a company-wide transformation. Employees from every department now greeted each other in sign language, and the once intimidating marble lobby was filled with new faces, clients and job applicants who saw the company as a place where they could belong. Nia's role as diversity and inclusion coordinator quickly expanded. She was invited to speak at industry conferences, sharing the story of how one intern's courage had sparked a revolution. Her workshops on accessibility and unconscious bias were packed, not just with Sterling & Co. staff, but with professionals from other companies eager to learn. The partnership with Mr. Ramirez's organization flourished, leading to new technology, mentorship programs, and a scholarship fund for students with disabilities. Malik, Nia's younger brother, visited the office one afternoon, beaming with pride as he watched his sister lead a training session. "You changed everything," he signed, and Nia smiled, knowing that every struggle, every moment of doubt, had been worth it. Even Mr. Sterling, once a distant figure, became a champion for inclusion, sharing his own story of learning sign language for a family member years ago. The company's reputation soared, attracting top talent and new clients who valued more than just profit. But the impact didn't stop at Sterling & Co. News outlets picked up the story, and soon other companies began reaching out to Nia for advice. She realized that her journey was no longer just about her own success. It was about creating a blueprint for change that others could follow. Victoria Hale, after a thorough investigation, was let go. Her departure served as a warning to those who clung to the old ways, but Nia never gloated. She knew that true victory was not about revenge, but about building something better. As she stood in the lobby one morning, watching a new intern greet a deaf visitor with confidence, Nia felt a quiet joy. The cycle had been broken. A movement had begun. If this story inspired you, drop a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know what kind of change you want to see in your own workplace. Your voice matters, just like Nia's did.